So where does that leave us? We have the situation where religious beliefs are inevitably dividing one community from another because they're incompatible. We have religious beliefs and the sheer divisions among communities leading to violence. And the most reasonable people in our societies in the West, moderates and secularists, are constrained by taboos from talking about this. We have really medieval superstitions deciding social policy in 21st century America. And what I argue in my book is that we cannot sufficiently criticize the encroach of medievalism and the spread of fundamentalism because of the lip service we pay to faith, because of the validity we accord it in our discourse. There's no one in the White House press corps who can stand up when the president says something like, "We need common sense judges," I'm quoting now, "we need common sense judges who realize that our rights are derived from God. And these are the kinds of judges I plan to put on the bench." Okay, no one in the White House press corps can stand up and say, "Mr. President, how is that any different from needing common sense judges who understand that our rights are derived from Poseidon or Zeus?" Okay, that would be the last question that journalist ever asks. And needless to say, we cannot possibly elect a president who openly doubts the existence of God, openly doubts the existence of a personal God who can hear our prayers, who takes an interest in our affairs. 70% of Americans believe that it is important to have a president who is strongly religious. Over 50% of Americans claim to find atheists highly disagreeable. Now, I think we can all agree that if anyone was dying on account of Zeus, if people were organizing their lives around different dogmas about Mount Olympus, if books were being written trying to explain and constrain science in light of the Iliad and the Odyssey, this would be an obscene misuse of human life. I mean, but it's not like someone figured out in the 3rd century that Zeus doesn't exist, but the biblical God does. That's not a discovery that anyone made. This is the situation we are in. People are dying for an imaginary God, and we are not talking about it. I mean, you can read the newspaper for a year and not be reminded that the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians is a religious conflict. It is always framed as a conflict over land. It is only about land because the religious beliefs are incompatible. The theological claims on the real estate are incompatible. And moderates like yourselves are uniquely unable to appreciate the link between religious dogma and violence. You are blinded by your own moderation. When the jihadi looks into the video camera and says, "We love death more than the infidel loves life," and then blows himself up, the religious dogmatists on our side, the Jerry Falwells of the world, they have no problem understanding that he was being quite candid. He really did have the courage of his convictions. This was not propaganda. He went to paradise, or so he thought. It turns out he has the wrong religion. But he was after the 72 virgins. So one thing I argue in my book is that it's time we took these people at their word. They're telling us what they believe. And I don't know how many architects and mechanical engineers need to hit the wall at 400 miles an hour before we take them at their word. So what is the alternative to religious faith? Now, there are two answers to this. The first answer is it's the wrong question to ask. Either God exists or he doesn't. If he doesn't exist, then we would be better off not believing in him. And what is the alternative to a belief in Santa Claus? The answer really is nothing. Now, it's not that a belief in Santa Claus was doing nothing for a child. You know, a child is entranced and consoled and interested and happy that Santa Claus exists. You take the belief away, you've taken something away. You haven't replaced it with something. But whatever conspired to make the belief untenable, perhaps he saw that it was his parents wrapping the presents. The belief disappears, and we all know that no one wants to be the last kid in class who believes in Santa Claus. And imagine how untenable the position of a child would be if he claimed not to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He claimed to have found a moderate position on Santa Claus, and he could keep the sleigh and the elves, but jettison the guy in the suit. So the first answer to the question, what are the alternatives to faith? There don't have to be alternatives. If these beliefs are false, if they're untenable, we can relinquish them. As many countries in Western Europe have done. Only 10% of Swedes, 10 to 15%, are believers of the sort we recognize in the States. Incidentally, 83% of Americans believe that Jesus literally rose from the dead. Now, again, it may seem insane, it may seem counterproductive. It's throwing the baby out with the bathwater to just say we can relinquish these beliefs without an alternative. But let me remind you about how easy it is to see the wisdom of this when we simply change the word God to Zeus. No one is feeling that maybe we should hold on to Zeus. You know, when we woke up the day after Christmas and turned on our televisions and saw that a killing wall of water had swept multitudes off the beaches of 12 countries, nobody said, you know, I think maybe we should be praying to Poseidon. You know, let's just cover our bases. But another way of answering this question is that, yes, clearly there are alternatives to faith. You know, whatever our spiritual possibilities are, they have to transcend culture and tradition. Whatever is true ultimately transcends culture and tradition. There is a very good reason why we don't talk about Christian physics or Muslim algebra, though the Christians invented physics as we know it. As we know, the Jews brought it to the next level. But we don't talk about the cultural context in which these disciplines arose, because there really is a there. They really are legitimate domains of knowledge that transcend culture. An experiment done in Los Angeles is going to work just like an experiment done in Baghdad if, in fact, it really is teasing out some real truth about the nature of the world.